Farm for Profit Podcast. Take a listen, have a blast. Farm for Profit Podcast. Learn about farming while having a laugh. Farm for Profit Podcast.
And listeners, welcome back to the Farm for Profit Podcast. Tanner Tanner Dory.
Yeah, start over with that.
Or Dory the Explorer.
I'm not starting that over.
This is Dory.
This is Dory Hillabo.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Dorn.
David.
Dorn Pork and Beans.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know where you're going with
I'm
this.
totally. We're just going to start calling him Dory. As
Dory
we put
the
this whole thing
Explorer.
together. All three of us are here today. Jeepers, this is off to a fantastic start. But listeners, we appreciate you being here as always. So maybe that was just a different way to get your attention at the beginning of an episode.
I think it's the GLC beef stuck in your teeth.
I think
that's
it is.
what it is.
Yes, this is one of the neatest little items of support that we've got here. Garrett, Land and Cattle. We just chowed down on some beef jerky. The what flavor was this? This was just good.
It's just beef jerky.
It's just his beef jerky.
Yeah, it's just good. Yeah.
That was. It was a great.
Call it eyebrows, sweat, beef jerky.
Oh, it ain't that bad.
You sound like my wife.
I've been surviving on this. I've had this for like 2 weeks, and I was worried that it wasn't going to make it to the studio. 'Cause it's good. He's got a bunch of good beef sticks, too.
That's great. Listeners, you can find exactly what we're talking about over on YouTube, so make sure you head over there to hit subscribe. We appreciate you sharing us with your family and friends. But today we've got Ryan Albers in studio with us. He's the strategic account lead for Landus. But we are here to talk with him about what he's seen professionally throughout this growing year and maybe get some insights into next year. Welcome to the podcast, Ryan.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me.
Let's start off with Ryan himself. Tell us a little bit more about who you are.
Yeah, so I live in west central Iowa, currently Panora, working on a house south of Bagley. I've got a wife and 2 daughters, so I'm busy a lot with kids' activities and don't have a lot of hair because of it. So.
I couldn't tell you got a hat on.
Yes, I always wear a hat.
Oh, have you? I should send you that. I just saw it on TikTok that the Dave Portnoy, which by the way, I've been now named because of that chemtrails video, the Wish version of Dave Portnoy.
The Wish version.
It's funny. But anyway, he's doing a pizza review, and he usually gets asked about people wanting to be in the review with him. And someone said, "How about I be in your pizza review if you do a hairline review?"
Oh.
And the guy's 26 years old, and he takes his hat off, and he looks like he's my grandpa.
Oh, man.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. He got a 9.8 on the hairline review.
9.8.
Yes.
That's
all right.
good.
Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah,
Yes.
no, I'd be close there. So, yeah, no, I've been working for Landus and its parent companies for about 12 years now, sometime in operations and now in sales. So I've spent probably 10 years in sales.
So what is that? What does that give you for a professional title? Are you an agronomist?
Yeah, so I'm a strategic account lead, so it's agronomy sales. So sprinkle in agronomy and sell farmers' inputs, fertilizers, chemical seed.
Is there a non-strategic account lead?
Yeah, so as a strategic account lead, I travel all over the Midwest state, in Iowa, then Missouri, Nebraska, Minnesota, Illinois. So I'm on the road a lot, seeing a lot of fun farmers. So
I think
learn.
Corey would be perfect for the non-strategic account.
You don't get to travel. He gets to travel. You just go stay
You have no strategy.
Right. that is kind of true.
You throw beef jerky at the wall and hope it sticks.
And it doesn't.
But yeah, we have account leads at each one of our locations, agronomy locations as well. So
Okay.
and they're more localized.
So you're just mobile.
Yes,
And that's
in the
what you
truck
went to
line.
school for?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Ag business was my major.
Fellow
So,
Iowa State grad?
Yeah.
Very nice.
Go clones.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're recording this just to make sure that you're caveated on your answers on the 23rd of August.
Yes.
How has the growing season looked in your territory?
We were blessed early with, every week we're getting an inch of rain or a half inch of rain. So early we got a lot of rain. It's dried off quite a bit now. I would say we're probably down from our highs. This last week of hot weather is going to take a toll on the beans and the corn. But walking fields, doing kernel counts, we're looking pretty good. There's a lot of sins of the spring that are showing up. Sidewall compaction, planted that week after Easter, and our emergence sucked. And so that's going to show up later, or just show up at the combine. We can't make that up. But overall, we're set up to have a pretty decent crop.
Yeah.
Is that the same thing you're seeing in your
Yeah,
fields?
I would say for the most part, we've had some pretty good dry stretches, it seems like, and then we get saved by a good rain, but then long
Yeah.
amount of time between. I think we had like a good rain on July 3rd, and then we didn't have another one until 4
August,
weeks later.
yeah. Right.
It was literally
Yeah.
4 weeks and like 2 days later. But they were great rains both times, so we're getting by on the skin of our teeth. Usually is a recipe for good
Right.
for us
Yeah.
with our soil types.
It's all going to be the kernel counts are there. It's just kernel weight.
Yep.
What do we
can we get it in there? And this week on August 23rd, we are on our first 100-degree day plus, but it's been upper 90s coming in, and I have thought the corn has taken it pretty well because we have high humidity. I think that saves us. But today, even with the high humidity, it's like 120-degree heat index. Yeah. The corn's suffering.
Right.
I just noticed that on the drive here today.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the corn plant's pretty efficient at getting the dew down to the root zone,
and
which is awesome.
It
That's
looks
cool.
like it rained every morning.
Yeah. And so that's going to help us out quite a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, it is very interesting to see how this is affecting. You know, I looked out the window at my yard last evening, and you can see where the grass is still green from the eave spouts, the downspouts, because of the amount of dew that's come off the roof and the condensation that has arrived, and then the rest of the yard looks pretty stressed.
Right.
And it's amazing because, we just had a good rain just a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So what else affects kernel weight? Is there other things that we need to be looking at?
Oh, your potassium levels, so your fertilizer levels, and the hard part is potassium's taken up in soil solution, and so you got to have moisture in the soil to get the potassium in your plant. And so we saw early a lot of potassium stress in the fields just because it was so dry, and you weren't actually soil tests don't say you're short, but you look short, and so that could affect your kernel weight. But I think we're set up to have a 230, 240 crop.
Yep. And I would say that before that July 3rd rain, when it was getting dry and we were having cracks in the ground like that, you could see the potassium deficiency, the yellowing from the bottom. That wasn't nitrogen, it was potassium because we couldn't just get it into the plant.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so before we dive more into what you've been able to help your clients with this year to maximize their yield potential, tell us a little bit more about Landus.
Yeah, so Landus is one of the larger cooperatives in the state. We have 60 locations spread out all over, and we actually just bought one in Minnesota and are putting a new one in Fort Dodge. We're kind of a different cooperative. We're focused, strictly on the future and the future of agriculture. We're working on problems like farmer health insurance and things like that, not just worrying about, inputs and how to get your grain to a market, right? We're concentrating on future look in ag tech and health insurance, and we have an innovation center in our headquarters in downtown Des Moines, and we bring farmers in and different companies in to look at the future of agriculture, which is really fun. We in our legacy companies, we're just kind of your standard cooperative and only worried about taking grain as fast as possible in the fall and fertilizer inputs and your chemistry, and that's not what we focus on. That's our core, but that's not what we focus on today.
Yeah,
which
you
is a lot
can't
of
drop
fun.
it completely.
Right.
You still need to be for the farmers.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we're tackling issues that, the cooperatives were put together to tackle issues that farmers could do on their own. And I think we're getting, as an industry, we've gotten a little lackadaisical in that. And now we're taking off in a whole different direction and tackling land issues and health insurance issues and things like that are not being tackled otherwise.
I'm kind of surprised we haven't been invited down to the Des Moines Landus
September
facility yet.
7th and 8th, we've got Innovation Connector.
I think we might have been invited to that on LinkedIn. Do you guys see that?
Mm-hmm. Oh. Yeah.
I think that was the first invite. I guess we haven't been there.
Yeah.
So.
It's a good.
Do you still have a connection to the research park and Ames?
Oh, we don't. No, so we moved completely to downtown Des Moines.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Who was the drone pilot that flew through that? Did you see that?
Yeah, so I can't remember the kid's name, but he works for us. He was actually a grain operations guy, so he was the guy out there cranking trucks and running an elevator, and has a real passion around drone flights and photography, and so we moved him into our communications.
Yeah. It must have been one of those first-person viewer drones with the goggles, because it was like people were in there, and he's like buzzing their heads and stuff. They had to be pretty nervous.
Yeah. We actually had, we had our Innovation Connector I think it was last week, and they had a manned drone in the parking lot, and he got up and flew around the parking lot in a manned drone, which was really cool.
Was it Rise?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
Yeah.
We've interviewed them
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get Corey into one at Farm Progress
I'd
Show.
love to do it. Yeah.
I don't know. I think
said
I
they-
might be over the weight restrictions.
I was gonna make the joke.
I will totally.
He didn't even let me make the joke.
He teed it
No,
up.
I got to do it myself.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the focus on future and technology. So is there anything that you utilize in your role or in the roles that report to you that you've seen kind of change the way you connect with your clients?
Yeah, one of the things we actually trialed this year and are going pretty whole hog into next year is called Tyrannus. It's a drone app. It's actually drone scouting, so they fly over your field 6 times a year. And the first 3 flights are stand counts and weeds, and then the rest of the flights are looking at weed pressure and disease pressure and insect pressure. And they can, it's kind of cool. You can click on an image they take and zoom in, and you can see we saw Goss's wilt this year, and northern corn leaf blight, and tar spot, and they can make maps so you go out and spray with a drone the localized areas that have disease in them.
Like variable rate.
Yes, fungicide passes. Yeah. So another app we've been using a lot of is the Growers app to price inputs across the Midwest. So we're involved in this app throughout South Dakota, Nebraska, Minnesota, and Missouri. So, and basically what that is it's a website farmers can go on and make requests for inputs. And so that it's all free form. So honestly, you could go on there and request Bush Light if you wanted to. Sure. if there's a supplier for
It's all
Bush Light.
distributing.
Right. Yeah.
We'll drop a pallet off of Bush Light on the best price.
Exactly. Yeah. And so that's kind of the way it works is, I have had quite a few growers get on there and request glyphosate. And, you don't know exactly. There's a lot of different glyphosates, right? There's 4-pound, there's 5-pound, there's K-salt. And so it gives me an opportunity as an agronomist to call somebody I would never have any business talking to and learn more about their operation and see which glyphosate they need. Is it K-salt or is it non-K-salt? Do they want Power Max or are they okay with the generic? It's pretty cool.
So will you guys actually sell outside of your member area? Like you said, talk to someone outside of the state or outside of your area. Yeah. So at that point, are you like a kind of a cash and carry?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so we have distribution centers set up, chemical distribution centers set up in 2 spots. So in Independence, Iowa, or Iowa Falls, Iowa, and Jefferson, Iowa, we have 2 chemical distribution warehouses. And so we'll drop ship it to the farm if somebody buys it. Yeah.
And Dave, you might not know, like you have full service. Like you walk into your local Landus, and there would be a sales agronomist there, and you want something to spray your pasture with.
Yeah.
They would give that to you, but that would be at probably a higher margin because they're providing you a service, or they might come spread fertilizer for you. But cash and carry would be like the farmer has their own sprayer, has their own fertilizer spreader.
Gotcha.
And they would get it at a cheaper price, but there's usually like
there's no service.
No service. There's there's a lot of times like no backing, right. Like if the product didn't work or something like that.
Especially in the generic market, right? You're buying a cheaper off-label product or off-patent product, and we're shipping it to your house, and it's
you have no idea if they mixed it right,
100%.
if they applied it correctly.
Yeah. But there's some pretty significant savings if you're a good farmer or you want to own your own sprayer or do your own stuff. We went to college. We can do a lot of the agronomy stuff the same, so it's a great place to cut costs if you know what you're doing.
Right. Well, and, any agronomist can't help but help you, right? If you called me and you bought a cash and carry chemical and you needed advice on how to put it on, I'm not going to tell you to fly a kite, right? I'm going to answer your questions. And so it's a savings and you get some service. It's just, if you mess it up, we're probably not going to come and bail you out.
Right.
Yeah.
A lot of products have like a respray program and all that kind of stuff. You just don't.
You don't get the fancy financing programs through it either usually. So,
I want to know, in our neighborhood, you should go up to Centennial and go towards the high school. There's like 6 yards in a row that are just toasted.
Smoked.
Yeah. Somebody didn't get their tank mix correct.
Just had Roundup in it. Right. Roundup's one of the best grass killers there are. There's one on my street too. You can see their pattern sucked, how they sprayed, because it's not the whole yard. It was just like literally, you could tell like one of the nozzles was heavier than the other. So it didn't even look good when they did that,
Yeah, but that's
at least kill all your yard.
Yeah, you'd want to till that up right away. So.
Yeah. I'm actually surprised these guys haven't, because it sticks out like a sore thumb. Yeah. So as you've been out and about taking a look here towards the beginning of fall, what's your advice to our listeners that are starting to make plans for next year?
Yeah, if you haven't bought your fertilizer inputs, get them bought. The phosphate prices are going up. Nitrogen prices are going up. So there's some retailers didn't come out to the market as early, so they probably have a pretty decent supply. But I mean, the market in general is going to go up. Your potassium's probably flat, but
What's pushing
else,
that?
Imports. So the phosphate market is really tight. Nitrogen, I can't tell you exactly why that one's going up, but it just is. So your anhydrous prices are going up. UAN is
inflation.
Well, I will tell you now. I mean, from the prices that I have got, we're looking at least under half of where we were last year.
100%. Yeah.
So
well, a lot of people ask me that with farm management. They're like, "Well, hey, corn prices are down." I'm like, "Yeah, but aren't your fertilizer prices down?" And so if one's down 160 an acre, the other one's down 160 an acre. Hey, maybe we keep those cash rents exactly the same.
Corn's down. Corn and beans are down 30% or something like that, and fertilizer's down 50%. So,
and your chemistry is going to be cheap again this year too. So
every farmer's screaming at the radio right now, telling Dave to shut up because the cash rent needs to go down also.
That's the argument that people hire me to make with most of their
yeah.
So you said chemistry also is going to go down.
Yeah, the chemistry market is tanking right now, and so it's posing a pretty big risk on our side just because of our procurement side. When do we buy? How much do we buy? Things like that. But glufosinate, glyphosate, pretty much everything's under a ton of pressure downward right now.
Why?
Supply.
Okay.
It was really high 2 years ago. Yeah, 2 years ago, chemistry was, and so everybody got into it. Started over manufacturing, shipping a lot from China and all over, and all that supply is hitting the market, and it's tanking. So,
I think the biggest argument to keeping cash rents the same, Dave, even though it might look good on paper, is probably the attitude in the market. If you were to ask me, if you were to sell corn for 2024 December right now and take a local basis from the co-op, you're looking at sub 450. Right? A lot of the last grain that we've marketed in the last couple of years has been 6+. And if you were to ask me whether we have a better probability of going under 4 or back over 550, $6, I would say most people are looking at a decent crop. We're seeing the crop tours going around this week. If we produce a trend line yield with the amount of acres that we have planted, we're looking at a sagging market.
Yeah.
And so that's the sentiment. If you're looking at Because if you establish cash rent price right now, I would tell you need to start marketing your grain right now because I don't know that it's going to go back up. My opinion.
Yeah. I would echo that. Yeah, we're looking at an oversupplied market.
And I heard other managers that I talked with last week upped 85% of their portfolio went up in cash rent.
Really?
This year.
Well, and the other sentiment to that is farmers have had 2 good years.
Yep.
So they might be looking for a place to put some cash, get your foot in the door. But I about guarantee you it's a foot in the door move, and next year it's hey, by the way, it's not as good.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I always worry about, with high cash rent, because I talk to a lot of farmers that do pay, decent cash rents, is farmers are going to make money, right? So if you're renting a farm that's really high cash rent, are you putting the fertility out there to maintain the soil levels? And maybe that's built into a lease, but it's not built into all of them, just because I work with some farmers that are paying some high cash rents. So they're going to make money on it. And
I would say even if it's built into the lease, I'm dealing with one right now. Like, they can't provide me proof that it was followed.
Yeah.
Right.
And so, I always argue for multi-year leases and keep them low enough that the farmer can make good money and still fertilize, take care of the soil.
Yep.
Although, I was talking to a farmer the other day, and I think it's interesting that soil fertility has nothing to do with soil value. There's not a lot of correlation between
CSR.
Exactly, it's CSR, but the base fertility, there's not even calculated in there, so it doesn't even, I guess maybe it doesn't even matter.
As a farmer buying one, and if you put 2 similar CSRs side by side, I can tell you which one I want.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's like having money in the bank.
Savings account. Yep.
Right.
Yeah. And I try and provide. Actually, I have a farm in Wright County. We just went and actually got grid soil samples, as well as if you could provide me yields. They provided me soil samples. They provided me fertility records on it from the co-op.
Yep.
And so I have all of those records that I was able to post on the website so that it would be prospective buyers can look at that. And
Yeah.
I think it'll add some value.
Yeah.
Security.
Right.
It'll add some security.
Yes.
Will it show up in price? I believe it will a little bit, but nothing else. Secure investment. I think more confidence.
Right. Yeah. The hard part is it depends on who neighbors it and how bad they want it, right? So,
Sure.
just like anything. But
Yeah.
it's kind of an interesting deal.
Yeah. I have kind of tried to combat the higher rents by going either to like back to the old 50-50. Mm-hmm. So you both share in good and bad. It kind of shelters you. And then also flex leases.
Yeah.
And I have tried to make the flex lease more simple,
Right.
where anyone can calculate it. It's not this big, massive formula that can be manipulated in many different ways. And Tanner and I were just talking about that this morning. So I think it's the right way.
Yeah.
So to help share.
'Tis the season.
Right.
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 I didn't expect us to talk about
Yeah.
cash rent, but that's fine. But now let's get back to the agronomy side of this, right?
Well, it's part of the puzzle.
It
right?
is. I'm not disagreeing with that
Yeah.
at all. So as you've gone out and, we don't know exactly what it's going to yield, but you know what fields look better than the others.
Right.
What's sticking out? What have the better fields done differently than those that might not look as well? Water, rain aside.
Yeah. I would say it all starts when you start planting, right? That's when the seed has the corn plant has the most potential in the bag, right? And the moment you put it in the ground, it starts losing potential. And so, the mistakes that were made early, you're seeing right now, whether it be sidewall compaction, those fields are suffering today because they pushed soil conditions to get the field planted. Depth is another problem we saw a lot of, and when you're at a moisture stress situation, you need your correct seed depth. And then planting that week after Easter there's some guys got away with it, but there's a lot of really crappy looking fields from.
Yeah.
So date was a big
Just
deal.
a lot of uneven stands.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Or, we had guys that planted 36,000 finals, or is what they planted. They ended up with 25.5 final stands.
And would be fine if it was consistent.
Right. Yeah.
But it normally never is.
No, it never is.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
And,
Yeah.
if you follow any of the PUKs for planters, it's all about getting the same depth and uniform seed placement across, and because you want that seed to come up
Every
within
plant looks like
hours
every other
of
plant.
each other,
Yes.
not
Yeah.
days.
Yeah. Because otherwise it's a weed. If it's behind, it
So
ends
if
up
that
being
seed
weed.
drops half an inch, it takes an extra day,
Yeah.
to get to the surface, and
Right.
it's just exponentially different as it grows and becomes a weed.
Yeah.
So that was how you started the season.
Yeah.
What about, is there anything that these top tier fields, top tier clients did in season that set them apart?
Yeah, I'm one thing I always tell the growers I work with is I have two main biases I never bend on, and it's nitrogen stabilizers. It's a cheap insurance, and fungicides. And I'm a believer that every acre gets a fungicide every year. More so on the plant health side, slowing respiration. All of it. Disease is kind of the side benefit, not the reason you spray fungicide. And so the guys that sprayed fungicide and are holding tar spot out or slowing it down, they're going to see a big benefit out of that this year.
So tar spot was a pretty big buzzword
Mm-hmm.
early on in the season. People got everyone stirred up because they were finding it earlier than ever.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the follow-up of the disasters that I've seen from like Indiana and Illinois a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Have you seen anything bad or what?
Yeah, we're finding some in southwest Iowa, so around Exira and Adair, we're finding some fields that are not good. The disease is not quite taken over, but close. Otherwise, it's pockets here and there of little spots in fields that we're seeing. I was surprised, we saw Goss's wilt again.
Yeah,
Which,
that's been a while.
That was 2009 when I was an intern with FC, one of the parent companies. We had Goss's really bad that year, and I haven't really seen a lot of it since. So
Yeah, I would say that hasn't been a thing.
What
for a
is
while.
that?
Just a bacterial blight,
yes,
isn't it?
yeah.
Okay.
So you can't control it with a fungicide or anything. But
And it's named after a guy named Goss?
yeah,
Probably.
Somebody's first guy to
a real
describe
jerk.
it?
Yeah.
Your best defense against it is rotation and hybrid selection.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of hybrids that just don't get it.
Right.
And so there was some certain seed companies at the time that had a lot of parent lines that was susceptible to Gosses, and you're like, oh, I bet that's that company.
Right.
You
Yes.
could tell by
Yeah.
driving down the road
Yeah.
at 60 mile an hour.
Yeah. It was a disaster. Yeah.
That's pretty impactful.
Yeah.
But what you've said so far has been very impactful. I mean, the fact that you've talked about if we're looking to buy inputs for next year, it's probably the right time to do it.
Yeah.
The way things are trending up. We talk a lot about making sure that we plant into the right conditions. Corey was mad at himself this spring on multiple occasions, not getting into the field on purpose because it wasn't right, and then maybe going.
There's a lot of FOMO.
Yes.
Right? Like when you're like, no, I'm holding out for better conditions, and then they're rolling,
Yeah.
and it's like,
Oh, yeah.
man, they will be right if I don't ever get planted.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Or
Well,
if I'm planting in June.
the hard part about that week after Easter was the soil conditions were right.
Oh, it's perfect.
It was perfect. It hit like 80 or 90 degrees. It was beautiful. And so, as an agronomist, I was like, why not, And then you look at the long-term forecast and below freezing and then 50-mile-an-hour winds blowing, residue around. It was, it's just a perfect storm.
I will give it to them. It wasn't a disaster.
Right.
Like they still are going to have a crop.
They are, yes. But it's going to be probably 40, 50 bushel off the pace,
Right.
which sucks.
Really?
Yeah.
You know what I did? I left the state.
I was going to say, didn't you go up
I
to
left.
Minneapolis?
Yeah. I'm
Mall
like,
of
I'm
America?
going up there, and I'm like,
I'm gonna
it's
go
going to
spend
be
some
colder
money.
up there. I'm going to be fine. And it was like 95. How?
Doesn't even make sense.
Yeah. Dad and brother are like putting on anhydrous and,
Yeah.
doing field work. But I'm like, do not touch the planter.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And I still remember, though, you weren't happy about it.
no, it's the FOMO thing. Like, because if I don't get into the field and they end up having a crop and I have to plant in June because it just rains every week.
Right.
Then,
Well, the year before in 2021, crop year 2021, we got in early. The guys got in early, had a decent crop, and then we had that rainy spell, just like what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And guys were planting everything else end of May, early June, and so it's just tough to outguess Mother Nature.
Yep.
Yeah, it is. So if we are going to start looking at buying our inputs, let's talk nitrogen, because obviously we can get that purchased in a lot of different forms. Is there a market difference? Do you even have a preference?
Yeah, so I do have a preference. There is a market difference. So you have your typical 10-cent spread between UAN or 32% and ammonia right now. The urea market it's higher, but it's actually starting to slide a little bit. So it'll be interesting to see where that one goes. This spring it was really cheap, urea was, and so it was hard not to switch guys into urea from what they're normally doing. But I prefer ammonia, and the reason why is it's the most stable form of nitrogen. So it just goes in the soil and it binds the soil and it's there, right? As long as you have a good nitrogen stabilizer to keep it from converting, it's there and stable. UAN is a good nitrogen source, but it's 60% ammonia, and it's like 40% nitrate, which moves with water. So you can lose a lot of your nitrogen with UAN, and so as a main source of nitrogen, I always struggle with UAN.
We try on our farm to split it up. We are anhydrous up front. And the reason that that's stable is because it has to go through another process. It literally can't be lost through denitrification or leaching unless it turns into a form that's leachable.
Right.
So that, even without a nitrogen inhibitor, takes, 50 days? Roughly above 40 to 50 days above 50 degree soil temperatures to transition into that form.
But it can convert rapidly at that point.
After it's, yes.
Yep.
But that's why guys can get away with it around here in the fall.
Right. Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
So if Corey's shopping for that, is that something that you and your role helps him figure out, or are you more just directed by Corey's always put anhydrous on?
Yeah, so I usually start out with kind of a conversation about what are you doing and why, because there's some growers out there that are staunchly against ammonia. So if I know no matter how much I talk, you're not going to buy ammonia, I'm going to sell you UAN, right? So, but yeah, it starts with the conversation of what you're doing, why you're doing it, and when do you prefer to do the action, and then we talk about the sources we can use to accomplish that goal.
Right. I think the biggest scare with ammonia is just how safe it is.
Dangerous.
It can be very dangerous if not handled correctly, or even if you have an accident and you were handling it correctly, it can be an issue, and people have lost their lives because of it. So that's the biggest risk factor.
Right.
Which you can pay someone that is an expert to put it on.
Right.
As well.
Yeah.
It's custom.
Yep. Yeah, we do offer that. Yeah.
So, I mean, Tanner's been asking about nitrogen, and I'm kind of thinking about, we have our core products, our NPK, our chemistry. Have you seen any other, we've gotten into these biologicals and things of that nature, which I would call off the rails agronomy a little bit.
Yeah.
Have you seen any of those rise to the top?
So I have some interesting I have some interesting trials out this year with Utrisha on beans, which Utrisha comes from the Corteva camp, and it's kind of, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but it's kind of like a Pivot Bio, but you spray it on with your post chemistry.
Right.
So it helps fix nitrogen into the plant. So I've got an 80-acre trial of that out. With the biological camp, you can't, kick a dead cat without hitting somebody trying to peddle biologicals.
Oh, yeah, everyone does.
And so I'm kind of a walk before I run person. I want to see it work and make sure there's going to be a return. It actually does what it says it's going to do before I'm going to talk to a farmer about it. And so as far as that camp is concerned, I've been really slow. And I was the same way with dicamba when it first came out, right? I watched salespeople around me sell a lot of dicamba beans, spray dicamba, watched the problems they were having, and kind of steered a different direction, right? Because I didn't want the issue and didn't feel like farmers really wanted the issue either.
Right.
And so I'm slow on the adaptation of those things.
We were the same way on our farm. We didn't want a thing to do with the dicamba. We were doing everything we could, and then we were offered the enlist side of things before it was really commercial.
Yep.
And they're like, hey, you want 40 acres of enlist? And it's like, no, I want all the acres of enlist or none.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want
Yeah.
two different things to basically
Manage.
another opportunity to mess up in the sprayer
Right.
and have one of those oops fields that, oh, what happened there?
Yeah.
Just like the yards.
Yeah.
So.
Except for a lot more expensive.
Right. Yes, that's an insurance claim.
Right.
And you just don't want the neighbors talking about you in that aspect.
Yeah.
So
I mean, you're always worried about the neighbors.
we're still dealing with dicamba off-site. Now, I don't know that it's as huge of a yield impact that it looks like it is,
Yeah.
but it shouldn't move.
Yeah. The hard part about it is, a lot of people like to blame their neighbors and their beans.
Yeah.
And there's so much dicamba sprayed in corn.
Yes.
That
Status.
Oh yeah, status or Diflex
Yep.
or generic clarity or name a dicamba. You can't just point to the neighboring bean field anymore. It's everywhere.
Yep.
And so it's really hard to pin down where it came from, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, because sometimes there's not a bean field around. It's like, where did it come
Yeah.
from? It's like, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So what else are you seeing for next year for the growing season as we start to make decisions and look, what we did this year? You talked about buying inputs, but is there anything else in any trials you've done that you would suggest somebody give a shot to next year?
Yeah, we've seen a lot of success with, the spreading every acre every year model. So feeding your bean crop just like you do your corn crop. There's a lot of guys that believe that beans are the weed between corn crops, and honestly, I'm a little bit guilty of that myself. I love corn, and beans are beans, right?
Yeah.
You can do everything right on a bean, and it's still going to be okay.
Yeah.
So it's a little less exciting, but we've seen a lot of success with spreading, potash and SO4, which is a gypsum product, in front of your beans. Also planting, corn's kind of a princess. It needs everything right. If it's going to come out of the ground, it gets lazy. And beans are a little more rockets, right? You can plant those early. If you treat them, they're going to come out of the ground. And at that point, you're planting nodes, right? You're planting beans. You're planting yield because your vegetative stage, they all flower on the same day or close.
Yeah.
And so you're planting nodes at that point to hopefully have yield. So if you're going to get anxious and you're going to get FOMO about planting, go plant your beans.
That's what I did.
Leave your corn in the shed until you have better days and go plant beans.
I like that. Princess.
Yeah.
Gotta be perfect.
Corn is a princess. I'm going to write that down.
Corn is that is the new one-liner. That we're making a shirt on that one.
So this year was my second year of planting my beans first. Last year was not so 2 years ago was not my first. It was a couple years before, just the way things worked out. But yes, we're stacking nodes. We have maybe a little bit more potential, but to me, it's a time value thing, right? Like the beans can take it more than corn.
Yep.
I have less risk with the corn in the bag.
Yep.
And then I'm not planting my beans. I don't plant corn the last week of April or first week of May, and then I finally get to my beans.
Right.
Yep. Everything goes in timely.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's kind of.
It's a hard mentality to get over, though. I mean, there's a lot of guys that cannot do that, and so.
And I will say, you're starting when everyone else is like, boy, it's cold to be planting corn, but you're planting beans, you're feeling good. But then by the end of the beans, you're like, okay, I should be planting corn by now.
Yep.
But you just stay on it and get it done.
Yeah. Yep.
So do you change your variety for a different length of grow time then?
So I haven't, because typically you choose your variety, months ahead of time. If I had a longer season variety in the shed that I could just magically switch out, I would prefer to just get a longer growing season, knowing that that plant is getting in there.
Right.
Because inherently you should get more yield. But it doesn't quite work like that unless you own a seed dealership, and because these guys don't like to return treated seed if it was treated in your shed already, and so it's a logistical issue.
I gotcha.
So as we look at these pre-orders and some of our planning for next year, on Farm for Profit, we try to give as much advice as we can. And we've already got really good points in this episode. But I was always curious about on-farm storage. Is there a discount opportunity if Corey has the ability to store? I've seen a couple of our listeners and former guests that have the large bullets to store anhydrous. Does that pay for itself?
Does it pay for itself is an interesting question, because I can't tell you it does or doesn't. There's so much regulation in the ammonia space that we're not getting rich on ammonia at Landus or really anywhere, right? You're making enough margin to pay the employees, move it, and keep your equipment up to Iowa State spec. So you're not getting rich on that. But there is a discount to having on-farm storage, because when we go buy our summer fill, if you work with us, we call you and say, hey, we're buying summer fill for X. Do you want us to fill your bullet too? And we'll fill your bullet, tack on a little bit of margin for our paperwork and time, and you own it, right? Mm-hmm. So there is some savings there. Now, is it worth the headache? I can't tell you that on ammonia basis. Now on liquid UAN, there's probably some savings there, because the cost to entry is not as high, depending on what your storage size is.
Yeah. You store anything on farm out of season?
We have liquid a little bit, but no, nothing bulk. Some chemistry that it's pretty easy to keep some packaged product or cage tanks. Yep. I guess I wouldn't call that true bulk, but you can keep it in the shop and keep it heated.
Yeah.
Type stuff. But
yeah.
No, nothing major.
Hopefully you returned everything this year.
I think actually we did a way better job of ordering. So our pallet that is usually 2 pallets at the end was a lot smaller.
The corner chem.
Yeah. And we kind of ordered it. It actually, if you pre-bought this last year, you could buy it cheaper in season.
Right. Yeah.
So we actually did pretty good at ordering short and then getting some extra insecticide and stuff like that in season. So I do want to go back to that. I mean, you mentioned the growers app, and it wasn't something that I would have ever thought a large co-op like Landus would have been a thing. When I first originally thought, I was kind of thinking more of the cash and carry guys, the smaller mom and pop type stuff. I mean, what got you guys into that?
I think for one, it's like I said earlier, it's a great prospecting tool. I mean, again, I've gotten to talk to people in southeast Iowa and southern Minnesota. I sold product to an organic grower in southern Minnesota, which why would I would have never talked to that guy, right? I never had a reason to. And so for us, it's a great prospecting tool. And then all farmers don't want to buy the same way, right? Some farmers don't want to go into their local elevator every time they need a 2.5 of something. They want to put it on their phone, just like Amazon or whatever, go into their phone and throw out the request, and either the preferred retailer or any other retailer they send it to gets that request, and they can place a offer on that product.
So they have to pick you?
No, they don't have to. So there's a retail network, and so they can send it out to all retailers in the network, or they can pick certain ones. So if they don't really care to get bids from other local retailers, they can say, I want this only to go to Landus, or I want it only to go to whoever your local retailer is.
They're not surely doing that on a 2.5, though. They're
not typically.
Okay, I was going to say.
Yeah, it's
got to
usually
be larger quantity.
Yeah, cage tanks. I mean, they could do it on a 2.5 because it's all free form, so you can type in literally whatever you want to type in there. Now, if you're out of state or whatever, and you're requesting Landus to bid you on a 2.5, the shipping is going to kill you, right? So you're never going to buy it from me. You know?
Right, but you could still get a bid.
Yes, 100%.
Also, not always about price, right? It's just about like some
Can you
people
get it?
can't physically get that product right in their area.
Yeah, and that's how I ended up selling the product to the guy in Minnesota. Is he talked to all his local retailers, they couldn't get him the product. He went to growers, requested this product, and I called everybody till I could find it and sold it to him. So
Interesting.
Do you know anybody can use growers?
Right.
On
Yeah.
the producer side?
Yep.
It's free to the producers.
Yeah.
They make their money on you guys have to pay a little. Is it like a membership?
Yeah, it's a yearly membership fee. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And it's you've played around with it. So it's a website now, but the app is coming.
I believe so. Yes,
Okay.
you still have to go to the website.
Yeah, and I just turned the website into an app on my phone. So you just click
Oh,
just
yeah,
visit
I
the
can do
that.
website.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense to me chemistry wise.
Yeah.
You know, herbicides, fungicides, things of that nature, but it's more than that. Like you said,
Oh,
you
yeah.
could get bush light.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, if we could distribute, we'd
But you can get seed.
Yep, seed, fertilizer, the whole works. Yeah.
I've tried to explain to people how to make an app on their phone on a website, and it is difficult for people to understand how they can long press hold, whatever.
So what about, so we talked about it in the cash and carry, but what if someone is in your area, say 2 Landus stores could service them?
Yep.
Can you still get the service? Like,
Oh, yeah.
Can they bid that too, or how does it? Or
Yeah, so they could put a bid in for spraying, spreading, ammonia application, aerial, the whole works.
and
yeah.
maybe they're a little bit out of your area, but if they had enough, you might.
Yeah, I mean, but depending on how far out, we'd have to maybe
Right.
adjust the rate. But yeah, they could definitely do that.
And they also have
I mean,
what?
well, that makes me wonder too. If they're outside of his service area, could Corey be logged in as a custom applicator?
And you guys just hire a custom applicator and then sell the product?
Yeah, and we do that. We work with local farmers that carry the license and insurance and have them spray for us. Yeah,
So it's kind of a partnership.
yeah.
What
I'm
about?
gonna go for it. I'm gonna go a different direction here. In
I
just
know
a second.
it also has, and I heard, and I haven't looked into it, but there's a financing aspect to it too. Have you guys tapped into that?
Yeah, so we mostly work with our own in-house financing. We work through CFA, Cooperative Finance Association, and so we buy the interest down and then finance mostly with in-house. But they also carry all the the manufacturer financing options as well.
Nice.
So could I kind of tagging on to the Growers app? One of the podcasts we did the other day is we had Power Pollen in here, and we talk about ways to be profitable, talking about new things we can do for next year, and ways that they can apply, when they should buy, for being profitable. One of the largest margins that we ever heard, or that I've ever heard on our podcast, was Power Pollen, and part of what their go-to-market strategy is to have co-ops do it for them. So they're just going to license the way that they do
The
it,
equipment, the technology.
the equipment, the technology, etc. Has Landus dove into pollen at all?
Yeah, they were actually at our innovation connector. Power
The one that we
Pollen
didn't
was.
get invited to.
Oh, that one. Yeah, we did get invited by our good friend Tim Kauser, though.
No, that was his field day. Yeah.
That was his field day to Power Pollen.
Okay. Yep. So yeah, we have looked into that. As far as implementing it locally, we have not, but it's something we have explored. Yes.
Thoughts on it as agronomist?
I haven't. I don't know.
Okay.
To be honest with you, I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's an interesting technology.
Yes.
That's the fun
Yeah.
of having these conversations.
100%.
To be able
Yeah.
to pick up opportunities.
I wasn't on that show, and I wish I was, because I had a bunch of questions too. But if I were to see its trajectory, I think it's going to revolutionize the way seed is made. Yeah. Now, they were kind of projecting it as potentially helping drought-stricken corn and all that, but man, if you could have a field of male that grows well in this region, and then you don't have to deal with those fields that it takes 2 rows of male for 4 females and all that kind of stuff, and have a whole field of female, and not have male acres that you got to destroy.
Yep.
Right.
And
It's a
you
big
know
deal.
exactly when the nick is.
Yeah.
I think that's where it's going. My personal opinion.
Yeah.
No, I absolutely I think that's going to be the biggest impact. That's going to be the biggest effect to a farmer's bottom line. And that's where I want to head with my next question is, right now our listeners, maybe have some inputs bought, maybe are trying to think about their plan for next year. What do you think is going to have the biggest impact next year? We asked you a question, what you see some of the best fields did differently in 2023. But as you look into 2024, what's your prediction? Besides planting right? We know that's important. We've done an entire episode on that because of how important it is.
Right.
What are some decisions we could be looking at making now that could really affect it next year?
I think a lot of what we concentrate on is agronomy, but I think if farmers spent as much time as they do on the planting and the input side of things, marketing grain, they could be so much more profitable. Because I see a lot of guys that don't spend a lot of time on a marketing plan, and it hurts them on their bottom line, and then they're having to make tough decisions on their input side. So, in my opinion, is we can spend all day talking about new products and planting right. We know all these things, right? All these agronomists know, how to put a seed in the ground right, at what depth and what fertility you need to raise a great crop, and that's all great. But if you're a poor marketer, you're going to struggle to make money anyway.
Give a good crop and lose it all anyway.
100%.
There you go, Corey.
Get on the marketing. It's such a tough animal.
There's a lot of emotion that goes into that, and that's where it gets...
Well, there's a lot of stuff you can take out of the Chicago Board of Trade, but if we can learn to negotiate with you guys better on basis and
right.
Where you want corn and beans and when and know that kind of stuff. So we need to lean on you guys a little bit to tell us.
Well, and we've got a whole team of people too that's what they do, right? We buy corn into our rail hubs or into our bean processing plant in Ralston at the times we need it, and we pay up for those if you'll deliver in those time frames. And so it's just getting people to utilize those people.
Because that is one thing. We can't control the weather. We can't control the Chicago Board of Trade or anything like that, but we can decide where and when we deliver.
Yes.
How much does the bank have a decision in that?
Meaning we are regulated to not have a decision, but it can be influenced by the date your payment is due.
Yeah. That's what I mean. Yeah.
That's about the only influence we have is we could establish a payment due date of July 1, which would incentivize you to sell at least enough crop to cover your expense from the prior year to sell on or before that. Now, there's nothing stopping a customer from going 60 days past due on a payment, outside of the fact that they may be looking for a new financier.
Right.
Yeah.
What about premium markets? Are you guys into any non-GMO beans or corn or anything like that?
Yeah, we did. We had a non-GMO program for a few years. We were going to crush non-GMO beans through our Ralston crush facility. That market is such a funny, up and down, hard to get your finger put on market that there's just too much risk for us in that market right now. Yeah. Now we are looking at how do we, with conservation practices and data around that, how do we take an identity preserved acre and then market that to downstream so they can market that to Walmart or different people in feeds. So we're looking into that. Today we do not have any specialty.
Right. We talked about that on this week's show. About doing certain practices. It basically brands your grain that is a
sustainable.
Sustainable, came off a sustainable acre.
Yeah.
Even though scientifically that grain's no different than
100%.
the next one.
Yeah.
You can say it.
But it's
kernel side by side.
It's the story behind it, right? That kernel.
It's the same thing with Prop 12 and a slice of bacon.
Right.
Yeah.
You can't tell me that you could tell the difference between this slice of bacon and that slice of bacon.
Right.
Just because of how much space mom had to walk around.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I
Very interesting.
totally get it. Well, is there anything else that you feel like we're missing in this conversation that would be valuable to our listeners before we wrap up?
And I don't know when does this air?
We're probably going to be end of August.
End of August. So everybody that listens is invited to the Innovation Connector September 7th and 8th, including you guys.
Oh, yeah.
So that's it's in our Des Moines office. I haven't had a single customer that has gone that says this was a waste of my time. We talk about a lot of hard-hitting issues in the ag space relating to land, purchasing land, health insurance, different new technologies in ag, power pollen. We've had them there. So, sign up on our website. You can sign up and we'll give you a hotel room and you can stay overnight and eat and drink on us and
You know what would be awesome?
Yes.
Is rather than making your customers wait for September, if Landus just had a podcast and they hired us to do it, that would be pretty fantastic.
So
we could be the Landus podcast.
We do have a podcast.
Oh, man. It could be so much better.
It must be better hosts.
Yeah, it need better hosts, apparently.
Yes. So.
Yeah, we just ruined every chance we have. No, that's great. If our listeners want to keep tabs with you or do want to reach out, besides going through the Growers app, what is contact information that they can utilize?
Yeah, so my cell phone number is 515-290-0452. My name is Ryan, and call anytime. I'm willing to talk to anybody. I truly enjoy getting to know farmers from all over and getting to see their operations. It's the highlight of my life. So,
and the last question that we ask our guests right now, and I'll give you some time to think about it while I summarize the show for today, is what do you enjoy most about the industry of farming, or what do you like most about farmers? So be thinking about that. But we got a lot of takeaways today, Corey. I hope you might need my notes to take home and use, because could be the time to buy fertilizer, because it looks like input prices are going to climb from where we're currently sitting. Making sure as we plan for next year that some key things that Ryan believes in is making sure you plant right, which we believe in here on the podcast as well. Using a nitrogen stabilizer as part of your program, and then a routine fungicide. All acres covered, having a fungicide every single year. Says also believes in feeding the beans like the corn. And we loved his corn is a princess comment. I'm pretty sure we might have to make a T-shirt or something out of that. We'll get Sarah on that.
Yeah.
And get a corn is a princess T-shirt. So thanks again for joining us. We did learn that some of the unique technologies that Landus is using. You said Tyrannus.
Yeah.
Was kind of neat. And,
Saurus Rex.
And, yep, Tyrannus. and growers, right? So a couple of unique things. Thanks for popping in studio. We really appreciate that. But what do you like most about farming or farmers in the industry?
Yeah, so I guess the farming aspect, my favorite part is the farmers, right? Getting to know each. I'm a big relationship guy, so I like to get to know people and their families and their different ticks, and I enjoy seeing how each person runs their operation a little differently to find success, right? There's always different little nuances, and so I really enjoy that piece. I always say that farmer success is my success, so if I can work with you and make you more successful, that's going to make me more successful, so it's mutually beneficial.
I like that. That's good. You got a challenge, Corey?
I do. I think one of the coolest things I found out of this conversation, and I've worked with them a little bit, is go to growers.ag, and it's not just the old way of walking into the co-op anymore and saying, what are we doing this year? You know, you can tailor it to yourself, and companies that were making those plans are adapting and can do it any way you want. So
the coolest part about it is, and I think one major difference between that and other apps that do kind of the same thing, is there's a personalized touch, right? So when you order something, you're not just going to get whatever they have on the shelf that says what you ordered. You're going to get a call or a question about, why are you ordering this? What do you need it for? So we make sure you get the right thing. It's not just
the Amazon of ordering products. It can be if you want it to be, but you can also work with the people you already like to work
100%.
with.
100%. Yeah.
I liked getting facts, so I shot off an email since we've had connections with growers. The app is coming in October.
Yes.
So, yes, you can still turn a website into an app on your phone, but it's coming in October. And for Landus specifically, app.growers.ag/Landus.
Yep.
So that's great. Dave's here chowing down on some Garrett Landon cattle beef jerky. Almost his eyes are watering. I don't know if you're going to be okay.
I'm about ready for a Busch Light.
This is good stuff. This is very good stuff.
I love that. Listeners, you are good stuff. Thanks for hanging out with us again. But until next time, have a good one.